First, giving all honor, praises, and thanks to the Creator, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God of Malcolm, Marcus, Elijah, whatever name that you may refer to him by. There's only one Creator, so we give all honor, praises, and thanks to him. I'd like to greet everyone in peace. First of all, we're taking our segment that's called Teach, Talk, and Tell the Truth. We're taking it to True Power today, bookstore in Chester, Pennsylvania, so that as the motto says, you can get your head right. Okay, so coming in to talk today, it's February, according to the Gregorian calendar, the year 2014. And we came in this afternoon to have a discussion that's mainly directed at brothers, because when we look at the state of our community and we understand the serious circumstances that are confronting us, the role of true responsible men and manhood is to be at the forefront, to take charge, to be thinking, to be acting, to be moving, to be causing a positive change in the midst of our people. So the subject that I actually want to touch upon this afternoon, and we want to have dialogue as well as the information that I'm going to bring in terms of monologue. We want to have an exchange, but when we talk about the serious times and the conditions that are facing our people, that's, if we wanted to put this in terms of who, what, where, when, why, and how, that would be what. And everyone is pretty much familiar with what. The what being the serious circumstances that are facing our people. However, when we start talking about the how did these things become the way that they are, and why? That's a part of what we want to touch upon today. So the subject matter that we're speaking upon focuses specifically on the plot to destroy. That's the plot to destroy. And we're focusing on some particular historical personages this evening, specifically Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther King, and then what we'll do is we'll put this into an ancient and a historical context so that you can see the relationship between what's happening today and what was happening in ancient times. So we're going to have to talk about another key deliverer in the midst of our people, who was a brother by the name of, in Hebrew, it was Moshe. Most people, as they have been taught about this particular individual through the European interpretation of the Bible, they know his name is Moses. So we're focusing on the plot to destroy. Specifically, we want to focus on the image and the focus and the function of black men, because as we look at the state of our people, it's no accident that our people are disproportionately those that find themselves ill, suffering from all manner of sickness. It's no mystery that our people find themselves disproportionately incarcerated. When you actually stop and you look at all of these social ills, they seem to disproportionately affect people of African descent, particularly those in the diaspora. So, if it pleases everyone, I would like to try to put a little interpretation and explanation as to how these things have come to be that way. in beginning, I want to start and I want to refer to the most accurate historical document that we have in our possession, which is the Bible. Now, I know that is a sensitive subject for many. I was one of them. However, when I began to be taught, when I began to find out exactly what was in the book and discover a purpose, discover exactly a part of how things have gotten to be the way that they are. So, just in giving a little information about myself, name is Gamariyahu Ben Yehuda, and since I'm speaking about the Bible, I have to tell you the perspective that I'm speaking on is from the Hebraic perspective. And in doing that, we understand, first of all, or I'm sharing, for those who may not be aware, that the Bible is a history book. It's a history book about a particular people. If you look in the book, as a matter of fact, there are a lot of misconceptions that people have about the book. I mean, we could start with something as ridiculous as Adam and Eve ate an apple. I challenge anyone, to in their Bible or their minister's Bible, their mother's Bible, I don't care whose Bible, to show me where it says that Adam did in fact eat an apple. It's not there. In fact, if we were to look at that information, we would see that what was to be consumed was actually knowledge. That it was the tree of life, the tree of the knowledge of good and or evil. There was a choice. So it wasn't an actual physical tree. That's not what we came here to talk about, but we'll go into that at a later time. The point that I want to make is this. The Bible is a history book of a group of black people. I have to say that. I have to express that in very strong terms. This will be my interpretation of Africa for the time being. And this is not on the subject, but I have to touch upon these things in sharing it with you. Now, first point that I made was that the Bible is a history book about an African people. Now, that's going to surprise many people, because when you have images such as those that come out of Europe, such as the ones that you see, Jesus, Mary, so on and so forth, and everyone is portrayed as a European, it would be very hard to place them in this geographical location that we know as Africa. However, just very simply, I think I could have done a better African than that, but very simply, let me try that again. I don't know if it's better or it's worse. Okay. So, in saying that that the Israelites were an African people, if we were to go back and determine what the boundaries of the original Garden of Eden as it is expressed in Genesis, we would be looking at what is known to most people in the contemporary context of today as the Middle East. The Middle East is a erroneous term. It's a geopolitical term that has been designed by Europeans to keep Africans in check and keep their dominion, their hegemony active. The Middle East, well, the first thing that you have to ask yourself is, what is the significance of the term Middle East? Maybe you would want to ask the question, where's the Middle West? Doesn't exist. It's just something that they made up. However, let's look at this for a moment from the standpoint of a European. So if you're coming from, this would be the Mediterranean Sea here, Mediterranean, etymologically speaking, Mediterranean meaning Middle Earth. Mediterranean Sea here, Europe, so Italy in this area and up further that way. Now, if you're coming from the perspective of a European trying to get to the Far East, then this term would in fact make sense. That would be the Middle East. But then again, you have to understand we're coming from a standpoint of a European mindset, and this is something that we have to be very careful of, because the European has changed times, he's changed laws, he's changed maps, he's changed everything. Everything that he's touched, he has put in terms of his perspective on the world. So this area here is actually not the Middle East. Reject that term. Forget about it. If anybody ever challenges you on it, you tell them this. This is actually northeastern Africa. The entire Arabian Peninsula, including Israel, including Jordan, including all the way over as far as perhaps India, Iraq and Iran. The biblical boundaries of what was termed the garden that was planted eastward in Eden went from the blue and the white Nile to the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley. Okay, that'll be in another segment where we'll touch upon that. Now, how do we place the Israelites, who we thought were white until me telling you this in the video perhaps, how do we place them in Africa? Well, for those who are more than a casual reader of the Bible, they know that at the time that the person that they told us his name was Jesus, which was actually Yeshua, it says that he actually fled into Egypt. So Israel being in this modern Israel anyway, being in this area here, says that he fled into Egypt, which would be in this area here, to hide, because Herod had a plot to destroy all the firstborn male children. We're going to go into that. That's what we're actually going to speak upon. So, if this was a European person in Israel, and he went to hide when Mary and Joseph took him for 14 years into Egypt, he went to hide in Egypt. Why would a white person go to hide in the midst of black people? That really wouldn't be a very good hiding place, is what we're saying. Also, we know that the Israelites, according to the historical text, it says that they were bondmen and women, that they were slaves in Egypt for a period of over 400 years. Their bondage actually ended under the leadership of Moses. Now, it says that they walked out of Egypt into the land of Canaan, meaning that Israel, now we know that Egypt is in Africa, or at least we're pretty sure of it, but if you check the modern maps, again drawn by the West and the Europeans, they're taking pretty much all of the lands above the Sahara Desert, and they're saying that it's not part of Africa. Only sub-Saharan Africa is Africa. So all of these regions here, the Middle East, that's what they term the Middle East. It's not supposed to be part of Africa anymore. So this is just a sidebar issue in terms of placing the Israelites in Africa. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of examples that can be found which substantiate this. So, having said that, the perspective that I'm coming from is a Hebraic one. I've spent over, in total, maybe 15 to 20 years traveling the Holy Land, and I can tell you from first-hand experience that the original people that were there thousands of years ago, the descendants of those people are still there today, and that they are in fact people of color. You will not see them on CNN. You will not see them on Fox News. You won't see them in many movies or whatever it is in terms of the media, because there is no interest in the European promoting that particular image or having it negatively reflect on the storyline that they've created. Now, why would the Bible be that significant? The simple fact of the matter is this, is that everywhere that the European has gone, he has used the Bible as a textbook for dominion. For example, we've heard it before that originally, before the Europeans came, that they had the Bible and we had the land, and then it got switched and we ended up with the Bible, their Bible, and now they have all the resources and they have the land. This is a very significant term. This will be a subject we'll touch upon that's called the power to define. Power to define something as simple as, say for example here, the Europeans, when they went into South Africa, over time of them living there, they defined themselves as Afrikaans, and they referred to the indigenous people that lived there as Bantu. See the power to define. If you, pretty much any place you go on the planet where the Europeans have gone, they have gone there saying that they were the people of the book. And the true people of the book have lost the knowledge of themselves in order to know what their destiny is. So don't want to get too far off of the subject. Want to come back into the plot to destroy, but we will end up touching upon some of these issues that we just hit upon to this point. Floor is open if we do have questions at any point in time. So let me put it in context for you. I'm talking about the plot to destroy. Again, referring to the biblical narrative. Let's go back to the time of Yeshua. If you are not familiar with that name, we'll just spend a quick moment and we will tell you that even today there is no letter in the modern, nor was there one in the ancient Hebrew alphabet that makes the sound of a J. The name, what happened was, this is the name as it would appear Yeshua. That's the way it would have appeared in Hebrew. In English, written something along these lines, Y-E-S-H-U-A-H. All names in Hebrew actually have a meaning. Yeshua literally means he shall save, he shall deliver. Jesus means nothing, but what Jesus is a Europeanization of this word here. They were seeking to combine the worship of Zeus with the worship of these Israelites who they had conquered in 70 AD. I see a book here, this piece here. Since we're talking, I was just talking about the power to define. I can open it and we can wrap it back up. I was just talking about the power to define. I need to give you that definition. It's very important. This page. This is out of God, the Black Man and Truth by Ben Ami, if I'm not mistaken. It's page 57. And it reads, in this spiritual warfare, there is a creed that says if freedom is ever to be realized, those freedom fighters who dare to challenge a powerful enemy must be equipped with divine skill and understanding. Skill to know how to confront such an enemy, the understanding to know when and where, and the blessings of God Almighty to undertake the task divinely. The power to define. The power to define. The ability to discern and the will to interpret and implement ideas and philosophies in order to be totally victorious in battle against one's enemy is the essentiality of spiritual warfare. So, reading that again, the power to define is the ability to discern. Think I should write it? Should I write it so everybody can see it?
Yeah.
Okay. You read it to me, I'll write it. I should know it by definition. 1 second, power to.
Okay.
This is perhaps the most significant topic and issue when it comes to black people the world over, whether they're in Africa or diaspora, because what has happened is that our adversary have defined everything to his advantage, including us. The power to define. After it says
the ability to discern.
Yes.
And the will to interpret and implement.
A little slower. The ability to
discern.
To discern.
And the will to interpret.
And the will to interpret.
And implement ideas.
And implement ideas.
And philosophies.
And philosophies.
In order to be totally victorious.
In order to be totally victorious
in battle against one's enemy.
In battle against one's enemy is the essentiality of
spiritual warfare. Exactly.
The essentiality of spiritual
warfare.
That's the definition. Or at least that's the definition that we're going to operate from. This is out of this is page 57, God the Black Man and Truth by Ben Ami. Let's look at the definition though. Power to define. The ability to discern. So when we talk about discernment, what are we talking about? Discern. To discern. To not only receive information, you can help you here, you know, we can roll.
To decide.
But to decide, you know, to receive, process, but properly process information, discern.
True.
Because all warfare is based upon intelligence. Sun Tzu says all warfare is based upon deception.
Right.
But you can't get to deception if you don't know your enemy.
Exactly.
If you don't know your strengths,
right.
His strengths,
so
his weakness.
Some form of
so
knowledge
you got to have knowledge. So the ability to discern and the will to interpret. The will to interpret. See, gentlemen, at least according to the European, a great British gentleman by the name of Sir Winston Churchill. He said he's famous for quoting. He's been quoted as saying rather that history will be kind to Britain because I'm going to write it. The will to interpret.
Yeah.
The Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, peace be upon him, he told us that as people of African descent, we had to begin to define everything in terms of our advantage, everything that we do, we should do it from a standpoint of doing it to our advantage. So we're saying the will to interpret in our favor and implement ideas. When we talk about implementation, we're talking about action. So in spiritual warfare, the ability to discern and the will to interpret and implement. Implement what? Ideas and philosophies. Why do we think, perhaps, they burned the great libraries in Alexandria, in Egypt? Would that have been a storehouse for ideas and philosophies that would have empowered the people that those ideas and philosophies came from? See, the discussion that we want to have is not one where I'm speaking subjectively. We want to speak as objectively as we possibly can in a language that everyone can understand, and we got to make this make sense, because the adversary has implemented ideas and philosophies to divide us. The adversary has implemented ideas and philosophies to put men and women at war with one another.
True.
Ideas and philosophies to cause young people not to appreciate and value elders.
True.
Ideas and philosophies that have basically caused many of our people live in a police state, almost.
True.
Well, not almost, definitely.
True indeed.
It's a problem of biblical proportions, literally. It's very interesting. We were doing some what I call step downs. Some of the violence that was taking place in part of the city. And we went to this one project, and we happened to stop. And, well, I'll make it quick. A woman was killed in her home. She was inside the house, the door was closed and all of that. Because the house was made of prefabricated materials. Okay? Now, we're talking about the state of the community. In warfare, when you're suited up on behalf of whatever branch of the military that you represent, once you make it to base camp, you're what? Safe. Nobody's storming up in there, and if they do, they probably going to have more problems than they would want to. Okay? Now, at least in base camp, you're safe. Now, we have brothers and sisters right now who are living in a situation where they don't even have a base camp. They're not safe inside of their homes because the bullets rip right through the houses, go from one end of the house out the back door. They're not safe outside their houses, obviously. Now, what's interesting about that is that even in the military, you find these people, they come back with what's called post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
And they at least have a base camp. Now, our people, in many situations, they don't have any safe ground. What does that do to the mind? What does that do to the psychology of a human being when you send your children outside of the house and you're not sure? How did it get this way? That's a part of what we'll be talking about. But it wasn't guns. It wasn't physical acts of violence that created a circumstance like that. It was ideas and philosophies. And because we didn't have ideas and philosophies to implement in opposition to that, we still fall victim to it today, because people do not live in a ghetto. A ghetto lives in people. Because I remember as a child going south, going to Alabama, and grandmother, she had a dirt walkway, but we had to sweep it. You know.
Word.
So all we're saying is that if people just take whatever it is that you have and you tend to it, you care to it, then the value of it will increase. So these are some of the things that we're just touching upon. Back to the definition: the power to define how this happens, the ability to discern, and the will to interpret and implement ideas and philosophies in order to be totally victorious in battle against one's enemy is the essentiality of spiritual warfare. Power to define. Power to define what? Marcus Garvey said everything. Everything. Everything to our advantage. And not to our disadvantage. So, what has happened is that the African has been in what I would like to call the penalty box. In hockey, for a player who operates outside the rules of the game, they put him in the penalty box for a period of time. Now, the game continues, but he's not participating. So what happened with us as a people, for over 400 years, we have been in the penalty box. And the game continued. We just weren't active in it. And now that we are back in play, someone else has written all the rules. Someone else has made up everything that pertains to the game, and we have to come to the point of figuring that out and how we can play to win, so that we can be totally victorious in battle. So, coming back to the time of Yeshua, because I want the brothers to see themselves. In fact, when I start to read this, for those of you who are familiar with the story, you'll recognize it. Going to the New Testament, and then we'll go to the Old Testament, and then we'll bring it to modern times. The book of Matthew, the 2nd chapter. It reads, now, and I'll replace the name. Well, I'll read it as it is. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod, the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. I thought everybody was supposed to be happy when this whole Jesus thing went down. Now Herod was actually a representative of the state of Rome. It's interesting that since, well, there's no other way to say it, all branches of Christianity ultimately find their origin and their root in the Catholic Church and coming out of Rome. Go more into depth on that at another time. It's true. So when Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled. And he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together. He demanded of them where the Christ or Messiah should be born. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem, for thus it is written by the prophet. And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Now, this is what we want to get to. Then Herod, when he had privately called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child. And when you have found him, bring me word again, and I may come and worship him also. He didn't have any intention on worshiping. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. And when they were departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt. And be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. White man talk with false tongue here. That's what that comes down. He said, I was coming to worship, but the idea was that he was coming to kill him, because we're talking about dominion ultimately. Now, this is the story as it's given. Ultimately, as a Hebrew, we definitely would have to lean to the Old Testament. The New Testament, there are many challenges, many issues, many controversies there. So we're going to put that up there for now. So during the time of, for argument's sake, during the time of Jesus, Yeshua, we see that there was a government plot, because Herod's the king. There's a government plot to destroy the Messiah. We're talking about the plot to destroy. Okay? Now, within the Hebrew culture, what you need to understand is that there was not one Messiah. There was not one. Within the Hebrew culture, the concept of a Messiah is something that is supposed to be continuous. Anytime that the people fell into error or they went into captivity, someone was supposed to speak on behalf of the people and lead them out of it. So in that context, this is not something that's strange. Noah was a Messiah. Moses was a Messiah, a deliverer. And as we go through the prophets and the times of the judges, they were deliverers. There's no additional religious, metaphysical concept, supernatural concept attached to it. That only happens when the European gets involved.
So you say Malcolm X was the Messiah?
Absolutely. Okay. He was a prophet.
No doubt. All right.
He was a prophet. So let's go back. That's during the time of Yeshua. Roughly around what is the common era, 41st century ACE. We want to go back approximately 5,700, 800 years, somewhere within there, to the time when Moses was born. Now remember, as we lay out this description, would like for you to try to see modern day America, modern day Jamaica, modern day fill in the blank, modern day Africa. Now, the second chapter of Exodus. We'll start at the 11th verse. Okay, no, we'll start at the first verse of Exodus. First chapter, the 8th verse. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Now remember that the Israelites, when we drew that map, we're talking about a black people, an African people in black African Egypt. All of this is taking place within the context of Africa. Okay? The Israelites are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal wisely with them. lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when war occurs, they fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And the leaders, they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. And the king of the king of Egypt, but when we read that, when we describe it,
sounds just the same. Sounds just the same.
So, what was Ramses had a problem? As it explains here, these people who were building their treasure cities, even though they dealt wisely with them, they continued to multiply and multiply and multiply. No matter how hard you work them. So, what did he decide to do? He said, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one, this is the 15th verse, the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife, pay attention, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the male children alive. So, during the time of Moses, at Moses' birth, there's a government plot, a government plan, a government policy to destroy
baby boys.
The boys, the male children. Why? Now, that's almost 6,000 years ago. We went 2,000 years ago to the time of Yeshua. Now let's go, this is 2013. Let's go back.
2014.
2014, thank you. Let's go back about 50 years. I'm going to read from, now, this is beautiful in this modern information age. You can get this information easily and quickly right off of the internet. That's where I got it. It actually wasn't even in the 60s. We want to talk about the counterintelligence program, or what was euphemistically referred to as Cointelpro. Counter, there's that word again, intelligence. Counterintelligence program, or Cointelpro, activated by the Federal Bureau of Investigations under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover as early as the 1930s. There's a book on there's one of the books, I can't think of the title of it, on Malcolm X, where it shows that they actually had files on Malcolm X. He was a nobody. They had files back in as early as like 52 or 1954. He didn't even have any idea that the Nation of Islam existed, but what that states and what that shows was how broad and how sweeping, how pervasive the plot, the assault upon our people was, and in particular black males.
Now, excuse me, did they pick him out in particular, or were they doing this in mass to black men in general?
He was one of the ones in general.
You're right.
So it wasn't him in particular.
Right.
It's the exact same situation now.
Wow.
It's because it's fishing.
Right.
You throw out the net.
That's right.
You're going to get a whole lot of fish, and in some of those fish, you're going to get some big fish up in there.
That's right.
So that's a part of what's happening. We're not actually talking about it now, but the mass incarceration of black men. See, it's the exact same thing.
That's right.
Because what is it called? Not the military complex, but the prison industrial.
Oh.
The prison industrial complex, where the privatization of prisons
Big business.
has become big business.
Right.
And it's like a car. In order to make your car go, you have to continue to put gas in it. So in order for these prisons to operate, you got to put people in them. Now how is that big business? A lot of people don't know that. So maybe we should touch on that for a quick moment and say that one of the things that people have to understand about the prisons is this, is that when you have all these people locked up, somebody has to get the contract for the shoes that they wear, the pants they wear, everything that they need. Somebody has to provide meals, and we're talking about a multi-billion, one of the biggest industries in the West. Okay, the prison industrial complex. We have information on that also. But it's interesting. Some of the research that we've done, we found out that prior to the Emancipation Proclamation and coming into the Reconstruction period, that generally the majority of people who were in prison were white. Disproportionately so. But then again, it wasn't profitable to have slaves, locked up. But what happened was they figured out a way to transfer those prisoners of war, I call them, that were caught up in the slave trade, to transfer them from private ownership to state and federal ownership through the prison industry. Because even today, and if you pick up a copy of the Constitution, slavery is illegal except in the instances of the commission of a crime, and this is what many of our brothers and sisters are in fact dealing with. So, bringing it to modern times, during the period of the 30s, which is when the FBI was successful in neutralizing the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the United Negro Improvement Association. It was as a result of the counterintelligence program, or Cointelpro. Among other things, and we'll read what they actually wrote. Among other things, they infiltrated these organizations and placed agent provocateurs, or which is basically a double agent. So if you can imagine this is a brother or a sister who you breaking bread with, who's living in the house with you, who you've known for years and years and years, but they're working for the adversary, against you, informing on you, against you. It's very
snitching.
It's one of the saddest. It's one of the saddest episodes when you think about it. I mean, situations as ridiculous as one of the most beautiful brothers to ever stand up and be recognized in the midst of our people and stand on behalf of our people, Brother Fred Hampton out of Chicago. This man was 21 years old, the champion, you know, the head of the Black Panther Party. I'm going to touch upon that. He was murdered by the Chicago police force in Chicago. Of course, it's Chicago police force, they're in Chicago. The operative who informed on him, he was given $300.
What?
$300.
That's crazy.
One of the saddest episodes you could ever imagine. You could ever imagine. But there have been many people like him. We know that when El Hajj Malik El Shabazz was murdered, that the person who performed CPR on him, mouth to mouth, was a double agent. You know, was an FBI agent. You know. So these were all part and parcel of the Cointelpro or counterintelligence program, which still operates today. Let's read what they wrote. This is a document. If you type in Cointelpro, you'll find this on the internet. You'll find several references. This is dated August 25th, 1967. Personal attention to all officers. This is from the director, or J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI. The subject, counterintelligence program, black nationalist hate groups, internal security. Now, we're coming back to this term, the power to define, because this will give us a very significant example of how the power to define was used to make people who were doing good in the community enemies of the state. It says counterintelligence program, black nationalist hate groups. Black nationalist hate groups. Now, if you hear hate group, you automatically start thinking we got us a problem. Black nationalist hate groups, they are implementing the power to define so that they can go to war against a particular group of people who they view as a threat. And it reads, the purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of black nationalist hate-type organizations and groupings, their leadership, their spokesmen, membership, and supporters, and to counter their propensity for violence and civil disorder. Okay? Now, you remember our definition, because here they're talking about being totally victorious in battle, because nothing is left out here. They're saying we're going to target the organizations, target their leadership, target their spokesmen, target their membership, target their supporters, in order to counter their propensity for violence and civil disorder. The activities. Now, keep that in mind. Their propensity for violence and civil disorder. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you their violent agenda. And then you can compare and see whether or not it's actually violent. The activities of all such groups of intelligence interest to the Bureau must be followed on a continuous basis. So we will be in a position to promptly take advantage of all opportunities for counterintelligence and inspire action in instances where circumstances warrant. The pernicious background of such groups, their duplicity and devious maneuvers must be exposed to public scrutiny, where such publicity will have a neutralizing effect. The pernicious background of such groups, their duplicity and devious maneuvers. Well, we'll see the groups that they're referring to. And you be the judge as to whether or not they were pernicious, duplicitous, and devious. Efforts of these various groups to consolidate their forces or to recruit new, this is key. Efforts of these various groups to consolidate their forces or to recruit new or youthful adherents must be frustrated. This sounds like Exodus to me. This sounds like the time of Moses, like the time of Yeshua. Efforts of the various groups to consolidate their forces or to recruit new or youthful adherents must be frustrated. This is 1967. No opportunity should be missed to exploit through counterintelligence techniques the organizational and personal conflicts of the leadership of the groups, and where possible, an effort should be made to capitalize upon existing conflicts between competing black nationalist organizations. When an opportunity is apparent to disrupt or neutralize black nationalist hate-type organizations through the cooperation of established local news media contacts, using the media, or through such contact with sources available to the seat of government. The seat of government is actually Hoover's office. He referred to himself as the seat of office, the seat of government. Because he said he was the seat of government because he saw presidents come and go.
He had all the information.
Had all the information. In every instance, careful attention must be given to the proposal to ensure the targeted group is disrupted, ridiculed, or discredited through the publicity and not merely publicized. Okay? We're coming to something. We're going to jump through this document a little bit because it gets a little bit clearer, much clearer than that. So, let's look at the goals. The goals of the counterintelligence program against black nationalist hate groups. This document here is dated 1968. March of 1968. 1 month before Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Keep that in mind. For maximum, because he was, if I'm not mistaken, murdered on April 4th. For maximum effectiveness of the counterintelligence program and to prevent wasted effort, long-range goals are being set. These are the goals. Number 1, prevent the coalition of militant black nationalist groups. In unity, there is strength. A truism. This is not me saying this. I'm reading the FBI document. And they're saying, in unity, there is strength. A truism that is no less valid for all its triteness. An effective coalition of black nationalist groups might be the first step toward a real Mau Mau in America. The beginning of a true black revolution. Number 1. Prevent the coalition of militant black nationalist groups. In other words, prevent unity. Prevent the leadership of these communities from having a unified effort to secure the interests of the communities. Now, number 2. This is what I want you to hear. And I want you to allow this to just echo in your mind. And I want you to think about Malcolm. I want you to think about Martin. I want you to think about Marcus. I want you to think about these kind of people. Number 2. The second goal of the counterintelligence program, number 2. Prevent the rise of a Messiah. who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. Wait a minute. The FBI is a law enforcement organization. Messiah was seen to be a religious or spiritual term. But the FBI is looking for a Messiah just like Herod was looking for a Messiah.
There you go.
Just like Pharaoh was looking for a Messiah, because Pharaoh during the time of Moses, he said, destroy all the firstborn, all the male children, all of them. If it was not even the firstborn, all male children. So we can see, without very much effort, the continuity between the efforts in ancient times and the efforts today, and the results, prevent the rise of a Messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. Doesn't stop there. Says, this is the actual document. If you get this, there's some books that have it in there. You can get it online. It says Malcolm X might have been such a Messiah. Now this document was written in 1968. So he was assassinated in 1965. This is right before they assassinated Dr. King. Malcolm X might have been such a Messiah. He is the martyr of the movement today. They murdered him already. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and Elijah Muhammad all aspired to this position. This is 1 month before Martin Luther King was assassinated. Elijah Muhammad is less of a threat because of his age. King could be a very real contender for this position should he abandon his supposed obedience to white liberal doctrines, in parentheses it says nonviolence, and embrace black nationalism. And Stokely Carmichael has the necessary charisma to be a real threat in this way. They chased Stokely Carmichael out of the country. That was the second goal, and we want to keep that in mind. The second goal of the counterintelligence program, number 2, I'm going to write this, 2, prevent the rise of a Messiah who could electrify, unify, and electrify. The militant black nationalist movement. Now, when we look at that, let's think about these young sons that are waging war in the streets.
How about that?
Okay, we're going to continue. We're going to try to burn up the rest of the battery and see what happens. But we're continuing to talk about the counterintelligence program. But we have to focus our attention on these young men that are dying in the streets, because it's not an accident. I'm hoping to be successful in laying out a case, because in my opinion, the greatest crime in history is the crime that goes undiscovered, the crime that has yet to be brought to trial, nor adjudicated, nor the perpetrators punished. So when we look at the great international religious conspiracy, the great international economic conspiracy, the great international cultural conspiracy against our people, these are all crimes that have yet to be pointed at as crimes.
True.
So, preventing the rise of a Messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. The simple fact of the matter is this, is that until we have strong men and women, strong young sons, our condition is not going to change. And as long as the young brothers in our communities are what I term enemies, there's only two forces. I have to say this. There's only two forces in the known universe that are vying for the souls of all men, all women. Not three, not four, not five, it's two. You have light and dark. You have truth and the lie. You have deception and reality. There's no middle ground. There's only one or the other. So in that respect, everybody is either one part of the problem or they're part of the solution. And because many of our young sons lack the knowledge of themselves, they are actually enemies of themselves and enemies of their own community, and they are predators upon their community. But we wanted to talk about Malcolm today because he started out that way. So we want to use Malcolm X as a prime example of one who could go from being a predator to being a prince. Because that's what the brother who eulogized him was married to Ruby Dee.
Ozzie Davis.
Ozzie Davis. Ozzie Davis said he was our shining black prince.
Right.
He went from being a predator to being a prince. It didn't stop there. We're just talking about the counterintelligence program. We're just talking about Cointelpro. We can go deeper into this at another time. There are other goals, so we're going to start to tie this off right here. But I want to speak for a minute about the targets, because after they detail the goals, which the second goal was to prevent the rise of a black messiah, and there were 5 goals that they listed here. Then they listed the targets, because remember, we wanted to talk about the power to define and these black nationalist hate groups. These are the targets. It says the targets. Primary targets of the counterintelligence program, black nationalist hate groups, should be the most violent and radical groups and their leaders. We should emphasize those leaders and organizations that are nationwide in scope and are most capable of disrupting this country. This is a 4-alarm fire. This is everybody. Okay? Now listen to the targets. These targets, members and followers of the. It puts a colon there and it starts the list. Now remember, the primary targets of the counterintelligence program, black nationalist hate groups, should be the most violent, and radical groups. These targets, members and followers of them. Most violent. Number 1, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. SNCC. Number 2, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The most violent black nationalist hate groups. Revolutionary Action Movement, come and gone. The Nation of Islam. These were the 4 groups that they listed. Power to define. Officers handling these cases and those of Stokely Carmichael of SNCC, H. Rap Brown of SNCC, Martin Luther King of SCLC, Maxwell Stanford of RAM, the Revolutionary Action Movement, and Elijah Muhammad should be alert for counterintelligence suggestions. Now, didn't stop there though. Didn't stop there. Because you also had the King Alfred Plan. You also had National Security Memorandum number 46 I have here. Because as we close on this for now, there has to be some type of an explanation as to what happened to our people. How did we go from ancient Kemet and building pyramids and Timbuktu and every possible charting the constellations without the benefit of telescopes? How do we do that? But how do we come from that to last hired, first fired? You know, the bell curve. What were some of the other things that they put on us? You know, to being the least intelligent, basically. How did that happen to us? It wasn't a mistake. Another part of this, as we look into it, this is National Security Council Memorandum number 46. This is March 17th, 1978. Okay? Now, this is from the Presidential Review Memorandum to the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, and the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. The subject, Black Africa and the U.S. Black Movement. The President has directed that a comprehensive review be made of current developments in Black Africa from the point of view of their possible impacts on the Black movement in the United States. The review should consider long-term tendencies of social and political developments and the degree to which they are consistent with or contradict the U.S. interests. Number 2, proposals for durable contacts between radical African leaders and leftist leaders of the U.S. Black community. Appropriate steps, number 3, to be taken inside and outside the country in order to inhibit any pressure by radical African leaders and organizations on the U.S. Black community for the latter to exert influence on the policy of the administration toward Africa. Now, this particular document is established in 1978 when a lot of good Black Democrats elected, and the president at the time was Jimmy Carter. Not even the Nixon administration, not even during something like the Reagan administration, not something like that. This was the Democratic Jimmy Carter. We'll pull some of the things out that are in here. The objective of our policy toward Africa, because the focus of Security Council Memorandum number 46 was to prevent a unifying between Africa and the diaspora. So at the same time that you're attacking the community with efforts like the counterintelligence program, you're also looking for anything international to prevent, after the wave of independence rolled through Africa in the 60s, prevent Ghana and Kwame Nkrumah, who came here and went to school, from influencing other leaders here and making some type of a connection between.
They didn't want us to link up.
That's what Security Council Memorandum number 46 is. That's strictly it. And they say, just pull out some things and we'll close on this.
Wow. And you can see the results of that now, because a lot of Africans or a lot of people that come from Africa, they have a distrust of Americans. I even heard.
Not a mistake.
I even heard some of them have, when they come for their citizenship or whatever, they had to take a film or they go through a different little film telling them to stay away from American black people.
Tell them all black people carry knives over here.
Yeah.
Guns. Ridiculous things that they, But however, when you see the movies
right.
and the shows that come out of America that's depicting us that way.
That's right. That's right. Wow.
U.S. interests in black Africa. A multiplicity of interests influences the U.S. attitude toward black Africa. The most important of these interests can be summarized as follows. I'm not going to read in all of it, but number one, political interests in black Africa. What did they say? If black African states assume attitudes hostile to the U.S. national interests, our policy toward the white regimes, which is a key element in our relations with the black states, may be subjected by the latter to great pressure for fundamental change. In other words, if a militant attitude or spirit out of Africa were to, according to them, infect black Americans, and they start putting pressure on the U.S. government for change. Got to prevent that. Thus, if that happens, they say, thus, the West may face a real danger of being deprived of access to the enormous raw materials and resources of Southern Africa, which are vital for our defense needs, as well as losing control over the Cape Sea routes, by which approximately 65% of Middle Eastern oil is supplied to Western Europe.
Wow.
This is 1978.
Wow. Wow.
Economic interest. That's the political interest. The economic interest, what they say. Black Africa is increasingly becoming an outlet for U.S. exports and investment. The mineral resources of the area continue to be of great value for the normal functioning of industry in the United States and allied countries. In 1977, U.S. direct investment in black Africa totaled about $1.8 billion and exports $2.2 billion. New prospect of substantial profits would continue to develop in the countries concerned. See, well, we have to understand that Africa is by far the wealthiest of all continents on the face of the planet. It would be a fair conclusion to say that if you could cut off all the resources coming out of Africa going into Europe and the West, that it would only be a matter of time before anarchy resulted. And the lights probably was going to go out. No resources in Europe.
No.
Everything in Africa. Everything in Africa. Oil, diamonds, gold, rubber, phosphorus, agriculture, aluminum, whatever you can think of, everything, platinum, everything that you could possibly think of that you need to sustain a modern civilization. You have there a modern economy.
Right.
This is why, see, this is a plan. This is spiritual warfare. This is the power to define, to be completely victorious with ideas and philosophies in order to be victorious over your enemy. This is what they do, and it's still in action today. Black Africa and the U.S. Black movement. Apart from the above mentioned factors, which were political and economic, the nationalist liberation movement in Black Africa can act as a catalyst with far-reaching effects on the American black community by stimulating its organizational consolidation and by inducing radical actions. Such a result would be likely as Zaire went the way of Angola and Mozambique. This is what we're talking about, the liberation of the various countries in Africa that were colonized by European countries. They were concerned that maybe that would again infect groups of leaders in the United States, and they would begin to organize themselves. This is incredible.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Possibility of joint action by, number one, possibility of joint action by U.S. black and African nationalist movement. And it reads directly: in elaborating U.S. policy toward black Africa, due weight must be given to the fact that there are 25 million American blacks whose roots are African and who consciously or subconsciously sympathize with African nationalism. This is the State Department. This is the State Department talking. And what they're saying is that what unfortunately many brothers and sisters do not embrace fully, the State Department in 1977 is stating very clearly that black people in America are from Africa.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say that.
That they are from Africa, and that the natural response for them would be to identify with it, to seek its interests. But how is it that most people, they don't even
dig it? They ain't even into it.
Probably couldn't name a country.
Right.
If we tried to sit down and we put 50 people in a room and said, give us all 50 countries,
right,
which means everybody only had to give one,
right,
most likely wouldn't be successful.
Right.
You know, it's not a mistake. These are the kinds of things.
Their ideas and their philosophies. Wow.
It goes deeper. Special clandestine operations should be launched by the CIA to generate mistrust and hostility in American and world opinion against joint activity of African and black American forces, and to cause division among black African radical national groups and their leaders. It was thorough and continues to this day. Matter of fact, we probably have to treat this whole document by itself, but just wanted to use that as an example of some of the programs that have been activated against those brothers and sisters in the diaspora, so that we understand that it's not a mistake. Now, one of the things I want to go back for one moment, and we'll close on this, that when they say black nationalist hate groups, the one who gave them the most problem or the most consternation, I guess would be a good word, was the Black Panther Party. But I want to read to you why it's so important that we get these young brothers, this militant black nationalist movement. I want you to understand why it's so important that we get them. This is the program. This is part of the program, rather, of the Black Panther Party. One thing that they had was an intercommunal youth institute. They also implemented, the Black Panthers, the original Black Panthers, they also instituted a community learning center. The Black Panther Party also instituted what was called the Son of Man Temple. Seniors against a fearful environment. All of these things are programs for survival that the Black Panther called them. Seniors against a fearful environment, or SAFE. Also, People's Free Medical Research Health Clinics. This is something that the Black Panther Party was doing at the time. They also activated what they called the Sickle Cell Anemia Research Foundation. They activated the People's Free Ambulance Service. They activated the free breakfast for school children program. They activated the free food program in the community. They activated the Black Student Alliance in the community, land banking, People's Free Employment Program, intercommunal news service, the People's Cooperative Housing Program, the Child Development Center, the People's Free Shoe Program, the People's Free Clothing Program, the Free Plumbing and Maintenance Program, the People's Free Pest Control Program, the Legal Aid and Educational Program. These are just some of the things. So that, in closing, we understand that all things that are necessary for the welfare and the well-being of our people, that we as men and women have to look inwardly, look into ourselves, look within our own communities, look within our own expertise, and discover and implement not only philosophies and ideas to be victorious, but develop ideas and programs such as these which were just listed, so that we can secure the well-being of our communities. It's time, brothers and sisters, for us to do for self. So, in closing, I pray that the words that have been expressed will be received in the same spirit of seeking to find solutions, seeking to speak in a balanced way to what the nature of the problems are that face our people. And I pray that the words will find a soft landing within the hearts and minds of those who hear this presentation, because I just detailed how they have divided and conquered us. And now the dividing and conquering is on autopilot. They don't even have to do anything. Now, the brother who is a Christian, he's not really going to interact and deal with the Muslim brother. Or, you know, the Baptist is not really going to deal with the Presbyterian. Brothers and sisters, all of these labels that we are wearing, we have to set those things to the side. Each and every one of those labels that we are wearing here in the confines of what I would call the captivity, all of those were things that we came in contact with on the plantation. The plantation of America. And as a result of that, I think we have to go back, and I challenge each and every one of you who are listening to this, go back and discover the origins of these labels, where they come from, and I'm almost certainly going to guarantee you that it's going to end up someplace in the geographical location known as Europe, which is not the source of our cultural, social, spiritual strength. So I close on that saying, you know, it's time for us to do for self, and it's time for us to unite.